Hello and welcome back to another video. You may be wondering, why is she wearing headphones? And that is because today I thought it would be fun to react to one of my old YouTube videos. So I was recently doing a video where I was ranking every Tessa Afshar book that I've ever read. And in that video, I mentioned my favorite one, how it was on my top 5 list of all time. And then I got to thinking, okay, I never actually made an original top 5 video, but I did make this video called The Beginner's Guide to Biblical Fiction. And if I remember correctly, the books that I held up here were my favorite books at the time of if you were new, this is where I would tell you to start reading. So I thought it would be fun to kind of react to that video and then share with you guys what I think my top 5 books now would be, my top 5 biblical fiction, you're new here, let me throw these books at you reads. So let's get into it. In this video, my hair is going to be a little bit shorter and yeah, enjoy.
Everybody, and thank you so much for joining me today for another video. Today I'm going to be bringing you the starter guide to biblical fiction.
Oh. Oh wow. Why did I do this?
So, if you don't know, I'm obsessed with biblical fiction.
Really?
And usually I talk about it a lot, and I get other people obsessed with it too. So what biblical fiction is, very short and paraphrased summary. Biblical fiction is historical fiction that takes place during Bible times or times written about in the Bible. Sometimes it includes characters or characterizations of people in the Bible. Sometimes it's just normal characters, fictional characters that observe something.
I loved those shelves, by the way.
So I am going to be bringing
Target,
to you the starter guide to biblical fiction, because now that you know what it is and you're all dying to read some, I'm going to do my top few recommended biblical fiction novels for people who've never gotten into biblical fiction before, and we'll see how this goes. Okay, now that I've gotten those books picked out, it's time to talk about them and tell you all why I think you need to read these books, why they're the best of biblical fiction, or why I would recommend them to someone who is just starting out in the genre and has not yet discovered what it is they like about biblical fiction.
I still ramble.
So the first book that I'm going to recommend that you try if you've never heard of biblical fiction before is The Pharaoh's Daughter by Misu Andrews. Why? Because it was the first biblical fiction novel that I ever read, and it is what got me obsessed with biblical fiction until everyone found out who he really was and he ran off into the desert.
There's background music in this,
Sea,
and I didn't know that, and I just started thinking my headphones were broken.
I have always been obsessed with
great editing job.
Ever since I was a kid. I listened to this.
Pause. I was just gonna say, it is my favorite. It is still my favorite. I own 3 copies, one of which is my original copy, one of which is the new, oh no, this is the original copy. You can tell because it's bruised. It's seen things. I then had to buy a new copy because this one was so messed up and damaged. I wanted a pristine edition, which is so funny because the pristine edition now looks just as old and damaged as the old edition. They just look identical now. So that didn't work out like I thought it would. And I can't bear to part with either one of them because they are both signed. They are both signed. So that is really wonderful and amazing. And I love that. One is I can't get rid of either of them now because they're both signed. And then this one is from my friend Audrey. She read it. She had a really hard time reading it, but she read it so that she could make an annotated version for me. And so yeah, now I have 3. Possibly a 4th one coming soon in the future. So just don't look at my shelves. They're messy. I haven't organized them recently. Okay, carrying on. But yeah, that music really scared me. I don't know if other people can hear it or if it's just because I have headphones on, but it was edited in really weird.
Soundtrack every single day, so don't judge me. DreamWorks is awesome. So is Disney, but DreamWorks is underappreciated. At least early DreamWorks. I'm not really into
much
new DreamWorks. Disney won me back. Not that Disney ever lost me. So when I saw this book was a thing, I was like, yes, I'm down. Sign me up. I'm back.
Pause. This is true. This is literally the book that got me into reading Christian fiction. It got me into reading as a teen, and it got me into reading biblical fiction. And it is such a huge part of my testimony. And yeah, I'll probably say that, but I can't say that enough. When my grandma passed away in 2015, I was 16 and this book came to me at the right time, and I was going through a lot and I just found it, and it literally only God could have ordained this, but it was life-changing to me reading this book. So obviously, if it weren't for this book, I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be reading. I wouldn't be writing. I wouldn't have published books myself. So this book literally is that butterfly effect book for me.
Buying it, and it was the first biblical fiction novel I ever read, one of the first Christian fiction novels I ever read, and the first book by Misu Andrews I ever read. And if you're not into this story idea, she has tons of other books that are all amazing. My favorite part about her books is the research she does and how everything is always so well researched and like just amazing in general. I would highly recommend this book. It's exciting, it's interesting, it really has just a little bit of everything, and it gives you a good idea of what biblical fiction is like. And if you do read this book, make sure you go ahead and check out the sequel, Jenna, which is Miriam, which I think is even better than this one. And Miriam is, of course, the story of Moses' sister. Also great novel, also great book. These are both fantastic. Just read them all. Just read all of her books because they're well researched. They have a lot of wit in them for what they are, especially Miriam. So if you think this one's a little bit dry or maybe it's just more history and more drama than what you're looking for, you should also read Miriam. They both kind of work as standalones, but I recommend you read them together. But of course you don't have to.
I am still that way. Like, I am a diehard, you must read books in order kind of person. And I realize it's getting impractical, especially with like Connie Lynn Cassette. I am always telling people you need to read her books in order because they're all connected. But there are so many now that at this point I've kind of let it go and I'm like, this is where you can start from. But I am still like, at heart, I am such a like, you need to read it in order of release or it will ruin it for you. So that hasn't changed.
But Miriam is hilarious. It had me rolling on the floor laughing because Miriam is
the
definition of what I want to be when I'm older. Huh. So there you go.
Maybe
the next book I'm going to recommend to you guys, if you have never read biblical fiction before, is Counted with the Stars by Connie Lynn Cassette. Oh my gosh.
Can I just say, really embarrassing short story. I keep saying Connie Lynn Cassette, Connie Lynn Cassette, Connie Lynn Cassette. When I started making videos about Connie, she would like share them to her Facebook page, and I just at the time was so starstruck, and I was like, Connie Lynn Cassette shared my video. It was a whole thing. I loved it, and I just felt like I was like, hey, look, Mom, I made it. Like, this is my biggest achievement. Connie Lynn Cassette shared my video to Facebook. That was like, I thought I'd peaked at that point. But then in CFRR 2019, Christian Fiction Readers Retreat, I went with Alicia, and Alicia was there, and then someone from Bethany House was there, which is Connie's publisher, and we were chatting like just in the like, you know, you're arriving and you're getting to know people and you're talking and blah 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 blah, and I'm really bad at small talk, and I was already really intimidated to be there because I'd never been to a like a readers conference or done anything like that before. All that to say, we're talking to like the Bethany House rep, I guess. I don't remember. I'm terrible with names. I remember the face. I'm terrible with names. We were talking to this beautiful woman from Bethany House, and I was like, oh, who are you? She was like, who are you excited to meet? And I was like, probably Connie Lynn Cassette. And then she looks at me, she was like, is it Connie Lynn or is it Connie Lynn? And like, she meant it in, I know, a nice way to be like, before you go meet her, maybe know her name. She was like, is it Connie Lynn or is it Connie Lynn? I think it's Connie Lynn. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't know what my mouth just did there. It made sound. And then from then on, I was like mortified. And I was like, I've been saying Connie Lynn in all my videos forever. She didn't care. Connie's very sweet. She's very nice. It was okay. But yeah, in case you're wondering, my name is Jenna Van Mourik. Like a mouse. So that it doesn't happen to you.
Beaming just thinking about this book. So like I was saying, how some books in the biblical fiction genre take characters or characterizations of people we know in the Bible and write about them. You know, like books like Jill Eileen Smith's Wives of King David series. We know they exist, and she just takes what we know about them and writes a novel into it. Very thorough explanation. Connie Lynn Cassette tends to take characters and she makes up characters of her own and places them in situations that we know happened in the Bible, but more from what they would look like from the perspective of just a normal person observing them, you know? It's like historical fiction at its finest. So yes. To make a little bit more sense of that, the Pharaoh's daughter is about the Pharaoh's daughter from Exodus who raised Moses out of the Nile. Counted with the...
I'm so sorry to keep pausing it, but I do stand by that. That is like my biggest pro tip for understanding biblical fiction. I always use The Pharaoh's Daughter and Counted with the Stars to explain the difference to this day. Like if I'm talking to someone, I'll always be like, for instance, you have this book and this book. They're both about the Exodus, but one is from a fictional character and one is from a historical fiction character. So to this day, that is my go-to like explanation for how it works.
Stars is about a girl who just observes Moses and exits Egypt with the Israelites, but is not actually a character in the Bible or someone from the Bible, but just a fictional character who exists at the time of a biblical event.
I lost my train of thought.
This book is amazing, and all of Connelly Cosette's books are amazing. I'm so excited for her next one, which is coming out not soon enough. And this book is about...
That remains true to this day. The Connie books never come out fast enough for me. Which is a me problem, because I read them too fast.
A young Egyptian girl who basically gets kind of kicked out of her house and sold into slavery by her family, like the Israelites wandering in the desert. But it's really good, and if you aren't
this got 3,000 views.
Reading about someone that we know existed in the Bible, this is good too.
Why?
Classic example. Definitely recommend Counted with the Stars by Connelly Cosette and all of her other books because they all tie in together, and cameos and book characters from other series cameo and are mentioned.
Little did she know.
Other series.
It would just keep going.
It's like biblical fiction goals. The next book I'm going to recommend to you is actually a collection of novellas.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have heard of this author and are already obsessed with this author, which is why I tend to throw this one at their faces when they want to know what biblical fiction is, because they're like, I didn't know that she wrote that. Yes, she did. This is A Lineage of Grace by Francine Rivers. It is a collection of
Nobody is saying that.
To serve
no one.
in his plan for humanity. She also has another one. It's called Sons of Encouragement. It's the same principle, but just with men. But essentially, this is a novella collection about Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary.
Oh my.
It's very good. Well, personally, I read biblical fiction to help me understand the Bible more and to help me understand God's Word and to gain a new perspective on it. And this book is the perfect example of that. I love how it includes Bible studies and questionnaires so that you can really compare the scripture with the fiction. You know, because a lot of times you read fiction and you just assume it's all fiction, but this helps you really draw those parallels.
A lot of times you read fiction and you just assume it's all fiction. Can someone put that on a t-shirt for me? A lot of times you read fiction and you just assume it's all fiction, and it's not. I know what I meant. I love the phrasing of that. That's so good.
It's from the Bible, and I really appreciate that. Also, it's Francine Rivers, and she's kind of queen. The next book I'm going to recommend is actually a pretty recent read for me, and it is Pearl in the Sand by Tessa Afshar. This book is amazing. It is a retelling of the story of Rahab, and to be honest, it's just a really well-written story, and that's why I recommend it, because the writing style is amazing in my opinion. And, you know, I hear a lot of great things about this author, so I'm really surprised it took me such a long time to pick up something by her. Great example of a biblical fiction novel based on a person from the Bible and a fictional characterization of them. And this
is really funny in light of the ranking Tessa Afshar video.
And it helps you really apply Old Testament stories to your life today. Because a lot of times we look at the Old Testament and we're like, well, it's not the New Testament, so does it really apply to me? Can it really teach me something? Yes, it can. This book is a great example of that and how it, really just
7 years ago.
God has such a redemptive power in our lives. And the last two books I'm going to recommend are The Crimson Cord and Rachel by Jill Eileen Smith.
Yes. Those are classics now.
So, Crimson Cord is another retelling of Rahab, and Rachel is the story of Rachel, sister of Leah. Rachel and Leah. Drama.
Okay, I think that at this point in the video, I just continue to ramble for another 3 minutes before I eventually stop recording the video. So I will end the react portion right there. I stand by pretty much most of what I said. I have changed, though, a lot of things. So I think if I was making this video today, which I am, I don't think I would recommend a single one of those books as the starter guide to biblical fiction. So let me just really quick reorganize my shelves. Okay, so let me start off where I think there has been the most change. I would no longer say that I would recommend The Pharaoh's Daughter if you've never read any biblical fiction and are looking for a place to start. So what I would say now, and I have a reason for this, it is still in my like favorites of like personal favorites, but in terms of favorites that I would recommend, I wouldn't necessarily hand that one out because I think looking back, it is definitely like a bit heavier, a bit darker, just in terms of the subject matter and the nature of it, which isn't a bad thing. And it's still something that touched me very deeply. But if I was recommending that you jump into a Misu Andrews book to really get like a good impression of her writing and her writing style, the one I would tell you to start with now, and the one that I would say is my favorite to recommend now, would probably be Isaiah's Daughter by Misu Andrews. And this covers the era of Isaiah and Hezekiah and all of that in ancient Israel history. And it's a beautiful story, a lovely story, and it's just, I enjoyed reading this book immensely. So if you'd never read a Misu Andrews book before and you were looking to start, this is the one that I would point you to. It is one of my favorite of Misu's books, and it is one of my favorites to recommend. Okay, so I still love Connie Lynn cassette books. I still think you should read them all in release order, but I'm older now. I'm wiser. I've lived some years and I'm more realistic about reading goals and expectations at this stage in my life. And Connie Lynn has written a lot of books now. It would be very difficult to go back to the beginning and catch up. So for that reason, I would recommend that you start with Voice of the Ancient. And I also think at this point in time, this is currently holding the spot for my favorite Connie Lynn book of all time. I know that's shocking. For the longest time, it was Counted with the Stars, and then it was A Light on the Hill. But currently, this one just holds my heart. I think about it probably at least once a week. I love this series. I love like the King's Men series specifically. I love these characters. I love this world. I love this cover. This story just, it's currently my favorite Connie story of all time. And I think that if I was recommending a Connie Lynn cassette book, not only as my personal favorite, but as the one I would recommend to you, it would probably be this one. Did I mention it's like during the era of King Saul? Because if I didn't, you definitely need to know that. It's amazing. Okay, at that time, there were a number of authors I hadn't read yet, and one of those was Tessa Afshar. And I think if I were to make a favorites video of where to start, my favorite would be Land of Silence, and I would recommend that one to you. But if you were looking for something a little bit different that maybe wasn't as directly tied to a specific biblical character, because Land of Silence is a retelling of The Woman with the Issue of Blood. If you were looking for more of a true classic historical fiction, I would recommend The Queen's Cook by Tessa Afshar, because this is about the cook who worked for Esther during the book of Esther, and it's just about the cook, the court, the servants, the lives of the like everyday people in Persia, like all the banquets, all of the feasts, the drama, the court intrigue, the decrees, the edicts, the battles, like it's just all, you know, but from the perspective of her cook. And I love this book. So I would recommend either this one, if you were looking for a true, great, excellent example of historical fiction, or Land of Silence, if you were looking for maybe something a bit more poignant, a bit more direct, a bit more life-touching. I think these two would be tied for my favorites in terms of Tess Afshar and the favorites of the ones that I would recommend. Now, for two authors that I didn't know existed back when I filmed the original video, let's go with Defending David by Barbara M. Britton. I love this book. In fact, I loved it so much that this is actually my second edition, because I loved the first edition so much that the book fell apart. And once again, I had to get a second, and I can't get rid of either of them because they're both signed. But another way you can know that I loved this book so much is because I actually got to write an endorsement to go inside of the book. So I'll just, Defending David turns the Psalms into battle cries, reveals the warrior within the psalmist, and reminds us all exactly where our help comes from in times of trouble. That is still so true. And I would recommend that everyone at least once try to read one of Barbara's books. Either this one or Lioness would be my two favorites. And then, of course, Providence. I loved Providence. But if I was recommending this one or Lioness, I went with this one because it's more recent. Okay, and last but most certainly not least, another author who was not even writing biblical fiction at the time when I made this video and has since published an entire biblical fiction series is Heather Kaufman's Up from Dust. Her writing is, quite frankly, prolific, profound, beautiful, poetic, literary, inspiring, uplifting, inspirational. Like, it's just so touching and so beautiful. This is a biblical fiction novel about Martha. Mary and Martha and the siblings from Bethany, Lazarus, and their role in the New Testament, in the Gospels. And it is amazing. I didn't think you could bring this much depth to the story of Martha. You know, like, I think we all know the story of Mary and Martha. Just, we all know that story, right? And I can't even begin to explain it, but changed my life. So that's my beginner's guide to biblical fiction 2026 edition. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're new here, my name is Jenna Van Mourik, and I have been reading and reviewing biblical fiction online since 2018, and I have been publishing my own biblical fiction since 2021. You can find out more information about me, my social channels, and my books themselves down in the description box below. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!